Hello and welcome to the Business Standard Morning Show. I'm Nazia Iqbal and here's a look at the stories for the day. While tabling her fourth budget, Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman claimed yesterday that it will steer the economy not just through the ongoing downturn, but will also lay the foundation for the next 25 years. With the economy still in the grip of pandemic, let us examine what this budget has in store for the country.
Budget 2022 saw a sharp increase in capital expenditure and the government committing enhanced support for the hospitality sector and related services. There was also an announcement that a digital rupee using blockchain would be issued by the RBI soon. Among other things, the government also rejigged the customs duty structure. The share of the budget allocated to capital expenditure is the highest in 19 years. Budget 2022 has allocated 7.5 trillion rupees to capital expenditure. This is 35.4% higher than the previous year's allocation of 5.5 trillion rupees. It amounts to 19.02% of the budget's total expenditure of 39.45 trillion rupees. The last time that the capital expenditure share touched a similar figure was when it came in at 19.32% for the financial year 2004-05. UR Bhatt, co-founder and director at Alphanity Fintech, has said that the thrust of Budget 2022 has been on infrastructure modernization, adding that this will have a multiplier effect as far as job creation and economic growth are concerned. He emphasized that the government has refrained from doling out any kind of loan ahead of the assembly elections in some states. The budget, he said, focuses on the next few years and not the elections.
I think it means that government is trying to push growth up, and it is doing it via pushing the investments up, and particularly in the area of infrastructure. Besides, I think central government pushing the capex, I think it's also incentivizing the states to invest in Gati Shakti related investments. Now, this is very important because the investment cycle is yet to revive. The large corporates have deleveraged, but they are not willing to invest right now because there is uncertainty and also because the capacity utilization is low. So I think in this environment, it becomes important for the government to push the investment cycle, and that they are doing through, as I said, infrastructure investments, which are supposed to crowd in private investments and help in revival of the investment cycle. So this is a positive for the short run as well as for the medium run.
There was also some clarity from the government on its stance on digital currencies. The finance minister said that a digital rupee using blockchain technology would be issued by the Reserve Bank of India starting 2022-23. Meanwhile, the finance minister has proposed that any income from transfer of any virtual digital asset shall be taxed at the rate of 30%. Further, in order to capture the transaction details, it was also proposed to provide for tax deducted at source on payment made in relation to transfer of digital assets at 1% of such consideration above a monetary threshold.
The digital rupee or the CBDC will be a game changer for the Indian economy. It will enable efficient and cheaper currency issuance and enable circulation of money within the economy. Not only is this a win for digital India, but also for the adoption of blockchain technology, because this will open up new doors for innovation, monetary efficiency, and help India build a robust economy. In the long term, we see that India will have the necessary infrastructure in place to emerge as global financial technology leaders in the upcoming decades.
The government has extended the Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme by 1 year to March 2023 and allowed the hospitality sector to avail of the benefit of the Credit Guarantee Scheme to help small businesses mitigate the impact of the pandemic. The guarantee cover has been expanded by 50,000 crore rupees, taking the total cover to 5 trillion rupees. with the additional amount earmarked exclusively for hospitality and related enterprises. To bring a level playing field for local producers, the government is phasing out concessional rates in capital goods and project imports gradually. The budget proposed a moderate 7.5% tariff on all such products with some exemption, such as advanced machineries that are not manufactured in the country.
The idea is that wherever we have domestic capacity, I think we can live with somewhat higher tariffs, and wherever we have capacity constrained domestically, the inputs that are imported need to be somewhat cheaper, I think, for which they are trying to reduce the duties. So I think it's in a way trying to push domestic production up, and which is consistent with the Atmanirbhar Bharat idea. BJG is essentially, I think, for ensuring that I think if you want to promote domestic production, how will you do that? You need imports, and imports, if you have high duties, then the cost of production goes up. So now what they're doing is they're differentiating between what is the nature of import. I mean, is the import coming in area where we already have a capacity? Then that should not. I mean, that should live with higher tariffs. You don't want to encourage those imports. But if we don't have domestic capacity, then we should try to make it cheaper by cutting duties.
In a push for Digital India, the government will start issuing e-passports with embedded chips later this year. It has envisaged the launch of 5G services by telcos within the next financial year after spectrum auctions. Further, the budget proposed to set up 75 digital banking units in 75 districts. All post offices of the country will soon connect to the core banking system to improve financial inclusion. The finance minister also announced plans to establish a digital university to provide access to students across the country for a world-class quality education. Business Standards A.K. Bhattacharya summed up the budget best.
Borrowing more, interest payment liability going up, and at the same time, government spending more on capex, tax rates being stable, and customs going up.
Ending an almost 4-month-long suspense on who would succeed Krishnamurthy Subramanian as the next Chief Economic Advisor, the government appointed V Anantha Nageswaran to the post 3 days before the Union Budget and 2 days before the Economic Survey, which he couldn't write. Our next report digs into the life of this well-known commentator on topical economic developments. We also take a look at his views on various issues to gauge his economic thoughts.
The government on Friday appointed 59-year-old Dr. V Anantha Nageswaran as the Chief Economic Advisor, a post which was lying vacant for the last over 1 month after incumbent Krishnamurthy Subramanian quit and returned to academia. Subramanian announced his decision on October 8th last year, just before the budgetary exercise for FY23 was to begin, and he demitted the office on December 17th, 2021. After about 4 months of hunting, the government last Friday announced the name of Anantha Nageswaran for the top post. An IIM graduate and a former member of Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, Nageswaran has hit the ground running. Although he wasn't part of the budget-making exercise and did not author the economic survey, he was seen answering questions during the customary post-economic survey media briefing on Monday. In his first public appearance as the CEA, Nageswaran said the growth projections in the economic survey were conservative and the assumption that crude oil prices will average at $70 to $75 a barrel through the year is realistic. Nageswaran is a man of many facets. He is a writer, author, professor, macroeconomist, and a consultant. After completing his schooling and undergraduate degree in Tamil Nadu's Madurai, he earned a postgraduate diploma in management from the country's top-ranked business school, IIM Ahmedabad, in 1985. For the next 5 years, he worked as a deputy manager at Chennai Petroleum Corporation. In 1995, he obtained a PhD in finance from the University of Massachusetts, where his dissertation was on empirical behavior of exchange rates. His postdoctoral corporate career spanned 17 years from 1994 to 2011 across Switzerland and Singapore. During this period, he has been a currency economist at UBS and Head of Research and Investment Consulting in Credit Suisse Private Banking in Asia, and Head of Asia Research and Global Chief Investment Officer at Julius Baer. Nageswaran took to consulting, writing, and teaching from July 2011. He has taught at several business schools and institutes of management in India and in Singapore. Currently, he is a distinguished visiting professor at Korea University's IFMR Graduate School of Business, where he was also a dean for a short while. In October 2019, he was appointed as a part-time member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister for a period of 2 years. He has co-authored 4 books and serves as independent director on the boards of Sundaram Fasteners, TVS Tires and Delphi TVS. He also helped co-found the Takshashila Institution, an independent center for research and education in public policy. Nageswaran has been writing columns commenting on economic developments for 15 years. In his articles, he had criticized demonetization, but later also spoke on the effects it had in aiding formalization. Last year, he advocated for a one-time additional tax on corporates, and before the farm laws were repealed, he wrote that policy makers should have wider consultations. Economist Ratin Roy, the managing director of Overseas Development Institute and a former member of the Economic Advisory Council to the PM, described Nageswaran as an accomplished policy professional who will bring much needed expertise back to the finance ministry. Nageswaran has taken charge at a time when household consumption continues to be stressed and job creation remains a concern. His expertise across a range of matters will help him in advising the finance minister on these challenges, and we can see the results from his primary responsibility of drafting the economic survey next year.
In an exclusive interview with Business Standard's Puneet Wadhwa, market veteran and vice chairman and joint managing director at First Global, Shankar Sharma shared his views on this year's budget. Here's the chat.
Hello, Shankar, and welcome.
Thank you, Puneet. Thank you for having me.
So, has the government batted on the front foot and hit a 6 as they got the budget proposals, or are they still playing a test match?
I think this is 5 sixes in a row kind of budget. Last year's budget, in my view, was like the Kapil Dev's innings. I think it was in some test match in England when India was facing a follow-on, and we needed 24 runs to go over the line. And Kapil hit 4 sixes in a row to take us over the line. So I think this is a great budget, which was needed. Puneet, see, understand this, that last 12 months macro picture for India and globally have been very benign. Rates were low, inflation was generally okay, stock markets did well, a lot of money kept coming in thanks to the overall benign liquidity situation. This year, things are not that simple or not that easy. In that kind of a upcoming situation that, we all know, the problems that are looming up globally. In that situation, we needed a really strong innings. And this is exactly what Mrs. Sitharaman has given us this time. I mean, if she could have played safe, I think she still chose to go out there batting aggressively.
So what is the one defining characteristic, according to you, that makes this budget stand out as compared to the ones presented over the last few years by her?
Some of the industries she mentioned, and I must confess that, even though I had no information of all this, I do believe that in my dream, in my sixth sense, I dreamt up that I should be investing in these sectors because those were exactly the sectors she mentioned in her speech. And these are exactly the kinds of sectors I have invested in or am planning to invest in. So drones, organic farming, EVs, 5G equipment, optical fiber cables, AI, every single one of them is, the environment, every single one of them have been on my buy list. I mean, imagine the number of times I think she mentioned drones, fintech, digital. It is really telling you where the mind of this government is going, which is that we need to become a really tech powerhouse of a country. Instead of just becoming a services economy, which India has done phenomenally well. IT exports are now, I think, $150 billion or more than that, which is an unimaginable number. I think the new age manufacturing, new age tech companies in the next 5 years will be exactly the space to be in. And that for me was a defining change in shift in thinking that the finance minister showed in this budget.
So startups also found a mention in the budget. Do you see more companies with the vague revenue outlook and obnoxious valuations approach the primary market in the next few months?
Okay, so there I want to make a distinction. I don't think we should extrapolate from the number of mentions of startups finance minister made to necessarily concluding that that window that has opened for Indian startups will continue to remain open. I think a lot of damage to sentiment has been done. I don't blame the companies. Let me make it very clear, Puneet, that I do not blame the startup companies for coming and selling their stock at the valuations they got. Ultimately, it is a buyer beware game. Equity investing, nobody's out there looking out for you. If investors foolishly went and bought companies with very, very unsound business models at crazy valuation, hoping to make a quick buck, some of them who got allocations and the stock doubled on IPO did make a quick buck. Many did not. If you say that you're going to just keep making on the greater fool theory, keep making money on the greater fool theory, I think you are the greater fool. So I don't think you're going to see a huge slew of new listings at these kind of valuations. I think that part of the market will definitely cool off. Whatever the finance minister said is more at the ground level changes for those spaces, which will companies, which will take a few years to fructify. But the new age listings, I think for now, will take a backseat.
Okay, so as regards taxes, LTCG has been capped at 15% for most asset classes. RBI plans to introduce now a digital rupee. Budget also proposes taxing digital assets and cryptos. How are you reading into all this? Will it trigger a shift from digital assets into equities or bonds?
I don't think we should again make those conclusions. I think the equity market itself will continue to get tremendous domestic flows, especially from retail investors. I think the number of demat accounts will likely keep going up, which means that every demat account, in my view, 20,000, 50,000 rupees per demat account, if you take, the buying power out there is phenomenal, to say the least. So this taxing of the cryptocurrency market, I think it's absolutely par for the course. It should attract some degree of taxation. And I think the finance minister is absolutely right. I have no disagreement with that move at all.
So how are you approaching markets now as a fund manager? What all areas, what all sectors, what all stocks are you looking to buy into?
I'm not buying any large caps. I think that trade of the banks and the financials and the FMCGs and the oil and gas, I think that trade is done and dusted. The only area in the large caps I really feel bullish about is Indian IT services. I think that's just on a growth tier. For me, India remains a great small cap market. Chosen wisely out of 7,000 companies, most will be duds and junks and manipulated stocks. But if you choose wisely, if you put in the hard yards, you will find a dozen, maybe 20 gems, which you can multiply your money several times over. I'm focused on, new generation tech companies in the listed space, but not the new listings. There are some old companies which are very, very good. So there are a lot of pockets. There are companies that are dealing with, the environment. There are people, companies that are dealing with electric vehicles, providing plumbing to all these ecosystems. I'm focused on those areas rather than the HDFC banks and the Hindustan Levers of the world.
Thanks a lot, Shankar, for joining us today. We hope to see you soon.
Every year, the union budget is finalized after getting inputs from all the central ministries and departments. The estimates provided by them for the spending to be incurred in the upcoming financial year for various schemes are part of the budget, which is then passed by the House. This estimate for expenditures tabled as part of the budget is called Demand for Grants. This report explains this document.
Each ministry sends out a demand for grant for funds it needs for the next financial year for various schemes. Once the process is over, the government then collectively presents them in Lok Sabha as part of the union budget. Article 113 of the Indian Constitution requires that any estimate of expenditure from the Consolidated Fund of India should be voted in Lok Sabha in the form of demand for grants. A summary is given at the beginning of this document. In Budget 2020-21, there were 101 demands for grants. It is presented at the lower house along with the annual financial statement, which shows the estimated receipts and expenditure of the government in the budget year, revised estimates for the current year, and actual amounts for the previous year. Generally, one demand for grant is presented in respect of each ministry or department. However, more than one demand may also be presented for a ministry or department, depending on the nature of the expenditure. For union territories without legislature, a separate demand is presented for each of the union territories. Each demand first gives the grand total of the amount of expenditure for which it is presented. This expenditure is then given under different major heads of account. Demand for grants includes aid given to states and union territories and loans and advances related to a scheme. The Lok Sabha has the power to deny or reduce the requested amount for a particular scheme. Sometimes, the expenditure authorized in the annual financial statement can fall short of the required expenditure. In that case, the government can present a statement of supplementary grants before the Parliament showing the estimated amount of further spending in respect of a financial year. These grants are to be presented and passed by the Parliament before the end of the fiscal. For instance, the Lok Sabha in July last year approved the first batch of supplementary demand for grants, authorizing the government to spend an additional 23,675 crore rupees. And in December, it cleared the second batch of supplementary demands, authorizing the government to spend an additional 3.73 lakh crore rupees during the current fiscal. Come February 1, and the government will table another set of demands for grants for approval as part of the annual budget exercise.
This budget may well set the tone for the recovery of the economy. Well, that's all we have for you today. We will be back with more news and analysis in our next episode. Stay tuned. Thank you for watching.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.